A 12-point lead. Gone. The Indiana Fever had a 12-point lead over the New York Liberty in the third quarter last night. The Liberty didn't even have Sabrina Ionescu. This was supposed to be one of the easier games on the schedule, and Indiana still found a way to blow it. Final score, Liberty 83, Fever 75. And here's the stat that should make every single Indiana fan stop and think. Caitlin Clark finished with 10 points, 9 assists, and 7 rebounds. She was a +3 on the night. She was not the reason this team lost, but none of that matters when your team collapses in the fourth quarter, your coach can't make adjustments, your big three is being called a chemistry disaster on social media, and fans are openly calling for a trade. In one night, one single game, everything that's been quietly building around this Indiana Fever team exploded into the open. And today, we are breaking down exactly what happened, why it keeps happening, and what it means for Caitlin Clark's future in Indiana. Stay right here, because this goes deep. Let's set the scene. Third quarter, Indiana leads by 12, 57-45 with over 3 minutes left in the period. By every measure, this game is in control. The Fever are at home. Correction. They're on the road at Barclays Center, but they're playing with confidence. The offense is moving. The lead is comfortable. Liberty is missing their biggest star. And then Brianna Stewart starts screaming. She turns to her teammates during the timeout, gets in their faces, sends a message, and from that moment on, New York turned into a completely different team. They went on a 19-4 run in the fourth quarter, 19-4, and Indiana had absolutely no answer for it. Not a single adjustment, not a lineup change that mattered, not a play designed to get the ball to the right person at the right time. The Fever just watched it happen. Stewart finished with 30 points and went 18 for 21 from the free throw line. She shot more free throws by herself, 21, than the entire Indiana Fever roster, who only attempted 15 as a team. 15. When you see numbers like that, you start to understand why this loss felt like more than just a loss. Now here's the turning point that changed everything. Caitlin Clark picked up her fifth foul with 6 minutes and 26 seconds left in the fourth quarter. Indiana was up by 3 at that moment, up by 3, with their best player, their most dangerous player, their floor general, still on the court. She had to sit, and Indiana immediately unraveled. Now Clark was honest after the game. She didn't blame the referees. She didn't point fingers. She acknowledged that she's been guarding on ball more this season, which naturally leads to more foul calls. She even called herself out directly saying, and this is a quote, "There was a couple that were just dumb tonight, and that's on me." That's accountability. That's a player who understands her role and owns her mistakes. But here's what's also true. Clark has had at least 4 fouls in each of her last 4 games, 4 games in a row. And at some point you have to ask, is this a Caitlin Clark problem or is this a system problem? Because when your best player keeps getting into foul trouble, there are 2 ways to look at it. Either she needs to adjust her defense or the system is putting her in positions she shouldn't be in. Coach Stephanie White even admitted after the game that the team needs to do better. Her exact words, "We didn't help her out. We didn't plug the gaps. Some of those are rotation-based, but some of them, our team defensive positioning has to be better, and that can take some pressure off Clark if we're in the right spots." So the coach is acknowledging it, the player is acknowledging it, and yet here we are, 4 games in a row with the same problem. Let's just look at the box score, because numbers don't lie. Kelsey Mitchell, 7 for 21 from the floor, 21 shot attempts. She had a team-high 21 points, but needed 21 attempts to get there. That's not efficient basketball, that's chucking. Aaliyah Boston, 6 for 15 from the field, minus 14 on the night. Coach White counted 11 missed layups for Indiana in this game, and Boston was the culprit on several of them late in the fourth quarter when the game was still winnable. And then there's this. Caitlin Clark went 4 for 14 from the floor, but had 9 assists. She set up her teammates over and over again. She found the open man. She ran the offense, and her teammates couldn't finish. One analyst pointed out that Clark could have had 11 or 12 assists if Boston had simply converted her looks at the rim. 11 or 12 assists, near triple-double numbers, and Indiana still lost because the people she was feeding couldn't put the ball in the basket. Meanwhile, Monique Billings, a player who has been criticized all season for underperforming, actually had her best game of the year. 15 points, 8 rebounds, 6 for 7 from the field in 35 minutes. If that version of Billings shows up consistently, this team looks very different. But the bigger picture is this. Over her last 4 games, Clark is averaging just 12.3 points per game on 28% shooting from the field and 27% from 3. Those are not Caitlin Clark numbers. Those are numbers that suggest something is seriously off. And the question everyone is asking right now is, what exactly is going on in Indiana? After the game, the WNBA world didn't hold back. Social media lit up immediately. One fan wrote, Indiana Fever have serious chemistry issues. I personally never thought Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell were natural fits together. You have no idea what you're getting from this team anymore. That post spread fast because a lot of people feel exactly that way. Another post that went viral said, "There is no point in the Fever keeping Caitlin Clark." You can see that the player who was first team all WNBA is still in there in flashes. You can also see that Stephanie White's system does not want that player. And then there's the one that probably stings the most for Indiana fans. Someone wrote, "If you don't want Caitlin Clark's system, then trade her. She's not a top 10 player in your system. She's the best offensive player ever in her system. How many bad shooting nights are we going to ignore? It's the system." Now, these are fan reactions, not insider reports, not verified information, just people watching the same games and reaching the same conclusions. But when the same narrative keeps showing up from different people, different accounts, different corners of the internet, it starts to mean something, and it doesn't stop there. Reports have also surfaced suggesting that analyst Jason Whitlock publicly claimed that White and defensive assistant Brian January intentionally limited Clark through substitution decisions during the Portland Fire blowout earlier this season. Whitlock used the word sabotage. That's a bold claim. That's a loaded word. And whether you believe it or not, it's being talked about everywhere right now. You can't have this conversation without going back to what happened in Portland. During the Fever's 16-point blowout loss to the Portland Fire, an expansion team, cameras caught a heated exchange on the Indiana bench. Stephanie White was giving forceful instructions during a timeout. Clark responded by putting her arms up in the air, and then White called rookie Raven Johnson off the bench to replace Clark mid-huddle. Clark stood up, watched the rest of the huddle from the side. Among players who don't typically play meaningful minutes, that clip went everywhere. Millions of views. Every sports account had a take, and the reactions ranged from "this is just competitive basketball" to "this is a coach trying to send a message to our star player in the worst possible way." When Clark was asked about it publicly, her response was 4 words. "It's my life. Used to it." Think about that for a second. The most famous player in women's basketball, a player who brings in more revenue, more viewers, more attention than anyone else in this league, and her response to a viral moment of her coach replacing her mid-huddle is "used to it." That's not a happy player. That's a player who has learned to keep her feelings tightly locked away because every single thing she does gets analyzed, dissected, and turned into a headline. The level of scrutiny on Caitlin Clark is unlike anything this league has ever seen, and right now, the situation around her is starting to feel genuinely unstable. Let's be real about something. Stephanie White is not a bad coach. She took this Indiana team on an underdog run to the WNBA semifinals last season without a healthy Caitlin Clark. That's not nothing. That's actually impressive. But there's a difference between coaching without your best player and coaching around your best player. And right now, the evidence keeps pointing to a system that isn't built to maximize what Caitlin Clark does best. Ryan Ruocco, ESPN's #1 WNBA play-by-play announcer, said it plainly on a recent podcast. Clark is the best pick-and-roll player in the entire league, and the Indiana roster hasn't been constructed or coached to give her the most space possible to operate that. The free throw disparity in this Liberty game, 41 attempts for New York, 15 for Indiana, tells you something about how this team is being schemed. The 11 missed layups tell you something about the offensive execution. The 19-4 fourth quarter run tells you something about halftime adjustments that never came. One team had a leader screaming on the sideline, making things happen. The other team had the same rotations, the same sets, the same problems they walked into the game with. Something has to change. The question is whether this coaching staff is capable of making those changes before the season gets away from them completely. Here's where Indiana stands right now. 5 wins and 5 losses, 3rd place in the Eastern Conference, facing the Washington Mystics on Monday with 0 margin for error if they want to stay relevant in the playoff picture. And the Caitlin Clark trade rumors, as wild as they sound, are not going away. Multiple accounts, multiple analysts, multiple fans are openly asking the question, could Indiana actually move their franchise player? The answer is almost certainly no. No rational front office moves their biggest asset, their biggest draw, the reason their arena sells out every single night. But the fact that people are asking the question at all, that's the story. That's how bad things have gotten, because this is a team with real talent. Clark, Boston, Mitchell, that's a big 3 that can compete with anyone in this league on the right night. Monique Billings just showed she can produce. Lexi Hull gives you a plus rating in 19 minutes and is somehow not in the starting lineup conversation. The pieces are there. They have always been there. The problem isn't talent. The problem is a system that keeps getting in its own way. A coach who is counting 11 missed layups but can't seem to stop them from happening. A star player who is averaging under 30% from three over her last 4 games, and nobody seems to have a real answer for why. The Indiana Fever are not a broken team, but they are a team that is very close to the edge. And Monday against Washington is not a game they can afford to sleepwalk through. So here's the bottom line on everything we just broke down. The Fever blew a 12-point lead to a Liberty team without Sabrina Ionescu. Caitlin Clark played well, and it didn't matter because her teammates couldn't finish and her coach couldn't adjust. The free throw numbers were a joke. The fourth quarter was a disaster. And social media is now openly debating whether Indiana should just trade their franchise player. This is not where this team expected to be at 5-5. Clark is not the problem. She has never been the problem. She's the player putting up near triple doubles and getting blamed for losses she didn't cause. She's the player getting pulled mid-huddle on national television and responding with used to it. She's the player averaging career low shooting numbers because the system won't let her play her game. Something has to give in Indiana, whether it's the rotations, the play calling, the defensive scheme, or something bigger. This team cannot keep going the way it's going. The talent is too good. The stakes are too high, and Caitlin Clark is too special to waste. If you made it this far, you already know what to do. Smash that like button. It genuinely helps this channel more than you know, and it takes literally 1 second. Share this video with any Fever fan or Caitlin Clark fan in your life, because this is a conversation that needs to be had. And if you are not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a breakdown like this one. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Indiana fixes this, or is this deeper than one bad game? I want to hear from you. We'll see you in the next one.